The silent storm. The city bus screeched to a halt at its usual stop on 45th Street. The hydraulic doors opened with a sigh that seemed to mirror the weariness of everyone aboard. The evening rush hour had begun, and passengers shuffled on board, their faces etched with exhaustion from the long day they had just completed. The bus was a moving reflection of the world outside. Tired, worn, but carrying on despite it all. Among the crowd, there was one man who stood out, not for his appearance, but because of the quiet strength and dignity that seemed to surround him like an invisible aura. The man's skin was a deep, rich hue, with lines on his face that spoke of decades of experience, of battles fought both physical and emotional, of hardships endured with grace. Every wrinkle on his face seemed to hold a story, a life lived fully. His steps were slow, but firm, as though each one was calculated with purpose. He gripped a cane with ease, polished, smooth from years of use, yet it did not seem like a crutch, but an extension of his presence. Despite his age, there was an undeniable strength in his frame, an unspoken power in the way he moved. The passengers around him glanced up for a brief second, noticing the old man with the cane, but soon returned to their own worlds, staring at their phones or staring blankly out the window. The bus was crowded, as it always was during rush hour. People jostled for space, leaning against poles, adjusting bags, and checking the time. The sounds of soft chatter, the rustling of bags, and the hum of the engine filled the air. But despite the bustle of the busy bus, the old man remained a quiet presence. He settled into a seat near the front, resting his cane between his knees, looking out of the window, lost in a sea of his own thoughts. His eyes seemed to focus on something far beyond the passing streets, a world that only he could see. At the next stop, a group of teenagers climbed aboard. They were loud and carefree, their laughter echoing through the bus as they pushed and shoved each other. The group moved through the crowded aisle like they owned the place, their energy uncontained. Among them was a lanky boy in a red hoodie, his shoulders slouched and his posture oozing the kind of cocky confidence that only comes from being in a world that both terrified and intrigued him. His friends laughed as they bumped into each other and joked around, creating a scene of chaos in the middle section of the bus. The boy in the red hoodie, however, was distracted. His eyes scanned the bus, his gaze landing on the old man sitting quietly at the front. The boy's lips curled into a sly grin, and he nudged one of his friends, whispering something that no one else could hear. He chuckled to himself, his amusement growing as he looked back at the old man. And quat, "Yo, check out Grandpa over there." And quat, the boy said, loud enough for everyone in the group to hear. And quat, "I bet he's just waiting for someone to wheel him home." And quat. The other teenagers burst into laughter, some even high-fived each other in celebration of the joke. Their voices cut through the low murmur of the bus, but the old man didn't react. He continued to sit, his face calm, his eyes fixed on the outside world, and his hands lightly resting on the head of his cane. There was no sign of anger, no shift in his posture. He remained completely unaffected. Encouraged by the lack of reaction, the boy in the red hoodie decided to take it further. He leaned forward in his seat, his voice rising above the chatter of the bus, and quat, "Hey, old man, you lose your hearing aid or something?" And quat, he yelled, his voice dripping with mockery. A few passengers turned their heads, glancing over to see the exchange, but most just kept their eyes on their phones or out the window. It was the usual pattern, people in The city didn't get involved in each other's business. But something in the way the old man sat, unmoving, seemed to hold the attention of the bus. The old man's head turned ever so slightly, his eyes meeting the boy's. The gaze was steady, unwavering, and though the old man's face remained calm, there was something deep in his eyes that made the boy hesitate. It wasn't fear, but a flicker of uncertainty, something the boy wasn't used to. It was a momentary flicker, but it was enough for the boy to feel something shift. However, his pride would not let him back down. And quat, "What's wrong, Grandpa? Cat got your tongue?" And quat, the boy sneered, his voice challenging, almost daring the old man to say something. The old man's lips curled up into the faintest smile, so slight it might have been imagined. Slowly, deliberately, he shifted in his seat and turned to face the boy fully, his cane resting gently on the floor. "Respect," he said, his voice low, steady, and carrying the weight of a lifetime of experiences. "It's a lesson some people only learn the hard way." The words hung in the air like a drop of water, suspended, heavy and powerful. For a moment, the boy's grin faltered. He blinked, unsure of what to make of the calm authority in the old man's tone. It was as if the old man wasn't just speaking to him, but to the entire bus. The energy in the air shifted slightly, and even the loud, rowdy group of teenagers seemed to pause for a moment. But the boy, unwilling to lose face, quickly tried to recover. "Oh, so you do talk," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "What, you gonna teach me a lesson, old man?" The old man didn't flinch. He leaned forward slightly, his grip on his cane tightening just enough to show he wasn't backing down. "Only if you're smart enough to learn," he replied, his voice still calm, but with an edge that seemed to cut through the boy's bravado. The bus fell silent. Conversations stopped. Even the low hum of the engine seemed to quiet. The tension in the air became palpable, as though everyone on the bus was holding their breath, waiting for what would happen next. Red Hoodie stood up, his friends watching with wide eyes, their laughter replaced by unease. He puffed his chest out, trying to maintain his swagger. "All right, Grandpa, let's see what you've got. Show me how tough you are," he challenged, his voice filled with false confidence. The old man sighed, a long, deep exhale, and rose slowly from his seat. The cane steadied him as he stood, but there was a quiet authority in his movement that made him seem larger than life. Despite his age, despite his frailty, there was a strength in the way he held himself that demanded respect. "You want me to prove something?" the old man asked, his voice still calm but now carrying a hint of finality. "All right, let me show you what real strength looks like." Red Hoodie looked nervously at his friends, his smirk faltering as he tried to regain his confidence. "What, you gonna hit me with that stick?" he mocked, trying to keep the upper hand. The old man shook his head slowly, his eyes never leaving the boy's. "No," he said, his voice unwavering. "Strength isn't about how hard you can hit. It's about what you can endure, and what you choose to stand for." The words struck the boy harder than he expected. For the first time, he wasn't sure what to say. His smirk faded completely, and the bus was silent except for the sound of the old man's cane tapping softly against the floor as he took a step closer. "I've lived through things you can't imagine," the old man said, his voice steady and firm. "I've seen real courage, men who gave everything, not for pride or glory, but for the people beside them. Strength isn't about tearing others down to feel bigger. It's about lifting others up, even when it costs you. The boy's shoulders sagged. His arrogance faded as the weight of the old man's words settled over him. His friends shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure of what to do next. You think you're strong because you can talk loud and make people laugh, the old man continued, his voice still clear and calm. That's not strength. That's fear. Fear that if you're quiet long enough, the world will see through you. The boy's eyes dropped to the floor. His shoulders slumped in defeat. There was no response. The old man straightened his back, his gaze sweeping across the silent passengers who had been watching the exchange. Kindness costs you nothing, the old man said, his voice carrying over the hum of the bus. But cruelty, that can cost you everything. The bus stopped at the next light, and the old man turned toward the door. Before stepping off, he paused, glancing back at the boy one last time. Remember, the old man said softly, every person you meet carries a story you'll never know. Treat them with the respect they deserve. The door opened, and the old man stepped off the bus. As the crowd swallowed him up, the passengers inside remained in silence. The teenagers who had once laughed now sat quietly, their minds full of thoughts they didn't know how to express. The bus continued on its route. But inside, the journey had changed. The old man had left behind something more than just a story. It was a lesson, a moment that would stay with everyone who had witnessed it. It wasn't just a ride anymore. It was a moment of truth, one that would stay in the hearts of those aboard long after the old man had disappeared into the streets of the city.